The Mecklenburg County ABC Law Enforcement Division provides a free training program to ABC permitted establishments called the Alcohol Seller and Server Excellence Training to educate employees on the possession and sale of alcohol. This ABC officer training covers underage sales, forms of acceptable identification, and employee age requirements. The Mecklenburg County ABC Board, more than a bottle.
Hello, everyone. I am so glad you are joining us today. My name is Beth Troutman. I am co-host of the morning show Good Morning BT on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT, and I want to welcome you all to Radio 1 Charlotte's Community Mental Health Series in partnership with the Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board. Now, this is going to be a space where I hope that you all can find hope, find resources, and find assistance. Now, over the next several months, we will discuss topics for all of you that can affect your overall mental health and your behavioral health. For this month, our topic is a very sensitive one. September is Suicide Prevention Month. And to provide us with the toolbox needed to navigate this, I'd like to welcome and introduce Kevin A. Markle. He is the Director of Education and Advocacy for Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. Mr. Markle, thank you so much for joining me today for this community health initiative. And again, this is sponsored by the Mecklenburg County ABC Board. It is really a true pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, hi, Beth. Thank you so much for having us and highlighting this hard but important topic. Really grateful to be here.
Now, you're right. This is a really tough topic, and I wanted to be a part of this discussion because, like you were saying, suicide is a really tough thing to talk about. I personally have lost friends to suicide, and most recently lost an uncle to suicide. And I know firsthand the pain, I know the guilt, I know the difficulties that come with trying to talk about loss. And for the folks who are part of the process, for them to try to reach out and get help, get assistance. And that's where you come in, and why I am so glad that you are here to open up this discussion and to make things comfortable for all of us for a very uncomfortable topic. At first, I want you to tell all the folks who are watching today what Mental Health America of Central Carolinas is all about, what your organization does.
Absolutely, and my condolences for your loss. Unfortunately, we hear this is not a unique story, right? We hear that all the time. Mental Health America of Central Carolinas, we've been providing support services around advocacy, education, and prevention for about 90 years. I haven't been there that long. And our organization does a lot of community-based trainings. We like to kind of say that we meet people where they are to walk alongside whatever that is they're going through. We also offer some counseling. That's something fairly new during the pandemic. We were able to open up a counseling center, particularly focusing on underinsured or people who just can't afford to get healthcare services around their own mental health. So we're very proud of that as well. Everything we offer as a nonprofit, we do for free for Mecklenburg and Cabarrus counties. And the ABC board, that has been such a huge partner for us. So we're able to kind of continue our mission and offer these trainings and supports, particularly at no cost. We want people to have access to education and awareness.
That's huge. I mean, I think probably one of the biggest things is access. So everyone has access. Talk to us and to me a little bit about the kind of services you provide to address things like suicide and mental wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very fortunate to work with a pretty talented team of trainers. We offer several different trainings in the community: mental health first aid, which is an 8-hour course, and it's literally designed for everyday people, right? To kind of understand signs and symptoms, and then how do we approach those conversations with our family members, our friends, our loved ones. Specific to suicide prevention, this is something I'm very passionate about. is QPR. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer, and it is an evidence-based practice out of Spokane, Washington. I've been training that for almost 15 years now. And again, it's like CPR. That training is literally designed to help people understand the impacts of suicide, give us an insight into what are some of those leading up to or precipitating events that someone who's struggling might be going through. And then again, how do we talk about it? How do we make it comfortable in those uncomfortable instances, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people are dealing with things and feeling very isolated, feeling very alone. And so there oftentimes are lots of kind of warning signs, things that they're going through. And what I like specifically about that training is that it doesn't require the person who's hurting, the person who's struggling, to have to be the one to reach out and ask for help, right? We want people to notice when someone is going through these things. And then again, how do we support them? How do we help them through whatever it is they're going through?
I am so glad that you brought that up, warning signs, so that the person who is experiencing the suicidal ideation isn't the person who has to necessarily be the first to reach out. For those of us who might recognize signs, what are some of those signs? How can we recognize so that we can be a helping hand, so that we can reach out and help those who are dealing with suicidal ideation get the help that they need?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, not a shameless plug at all. I want everybody to have access to that training, just like CPR first aid. There's a lot, right? It's very individualized. And I think one of the big things that I've learned over the years is kind of trust your gut, right? We know when somebody around us is just not themselves, right? Maybe they, financial issues. I know a lot of people lost their jobs during COVID. That situation put a lot of people at risk for all types of mental health challenges. And again, suicide is one of those things that just kind of comes up as we're dealing with daily stresses, as we're dealing with our own health. And so those just everyday factors play a huge role in that. For young people, particularly, I think the transition back to school. Going into middle school, going into high school, transitioning to college, that alone is a huge stressor that I think a lot of times plays into people feeling uneasy, anxious, depressed. Depression can look a lot different for individuals. One thing we try to teach and really highlight on is that anger is often a warning sign or a symptom of depression. So oftentimes if people are irritable or just, kind of pushing people away, we want people to understand that something else might be going on internally with that individual. How do we do that, right? How do we support them and talk to them? And then on the other side, some really tangible things, making statements. I don't want to be here anymore. You're not going to have to worry about me. That feeling of burdensomeness oftentimes is how the person dealing with suicidal thinking is feeling. And then, of course, access to means, looking for firearm, looking for prescription medications. Those are some big ones that, we just want to be aware. And one thing that I think is important is that it's not on any one supporter to kind of recognize these things. I might see something, you may see something in a close friend. And so how do we kind of approach this with a wraparound support for that individual who's going through something? Even if they're not actively having suicidal thoughts, it absolutely opens up that conversation to say, yeah, I'm struggling with anxiety, or I'm dealing with these things in my life. What better way for us to kind of come together and say, I'm here if you need me. You're not alone. And here's some access to resources or things that maybe we could try. And again, that's going to be very individualized. I like to also just share, I think it's important for us to understand recovery is possible. Just like any physical health thing, people can recover from dealing with these heavy, feelings and kind of symptoms of their own mental health. So that sometimes gives us or kind of promotes us as supporters to lean in a little bit more and use our listening skills to support that individual.
So for those folks who may be watching today and they may be hearing exactly what you're saying and they're thinking, "Oh, wait, my friend or my family member is showing some of these signs." What are some of the resources available to help the conversation, to help that person, and how many of us are actually impacted by
Yes.
suicide?
Yeah. So let me start first by a big resource that is easy to remember, accessible to all people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number has changed last year to 988. Very intentional to look at it kind of as an easy, quick reminder. And I like to also remind people you can call that yourself. If you're worried about a friend or a family member and you're just not sure, what do I do? I'm worried about my friend. Call that number, ask them. You can talk to a trained crisis counselor. They can guide you through additional local resources, maybe tailoring it a little more specific. If it's, someone who's experiencing, let's say, job loss, there's resources out there for people to connect with. Not a shameless plug, because I'm very proud of the work we do at Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. We're a great resource. There's all kinds of community partners as well, but we have relationships with a lot of other mental health supporting organizations. And so we're not just going to say, here's a number, good luck, but we'll talk with you, offer those kind of supports, and kind of help you develop a plan and strategy in order to support that individual. Again, 988, I think, is a really just easy to remember, accessible number for people to have. And then certainly get trained, right? I think, again, we offer QPR, question, persuade, refer, suicide prevention trainings pretty regularly on our website. I'm very proud that we offer those for free for our community members. And it's a certification. That's cool. But I think it gives people the opportunity to kind of have these awareness skills, to talk about it in a safe, controlled space with trained instructors, so we can kind of help you develop some tools in your toolkit.
And how many people are impacted
Yeah.
by suicide? Not just necessarily suicide ideation, but people who have experienced it through a friend or a relative.
Yeah. Beth, these numbers are pretty staggering. So suicide is one of the most underreported types of death, unfortunately. Second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. And as a parent, I know if you're listening to this, that's hard to hear. Our young people are absolutely kind of at the top of the list when we look at suicide and just the impacts of that. In America, roughly almost 50,000 people will die of suicide. And something that's interesting to me as an educator is that's suicidal death that we know of. When you start looking at, people who are having attempts, those numbers greatly expand. So for every one suicide death, there's approximately 25 people who will have an attempt. And that means they've been seen by an ER, a clinician. That's how we get those numbers. But they're high. The numbers are high. In North Carolina, we're about average. So it's about 16 people per 100,000. And again, not getting too caught up on data, it's underreported. We know that this is something that all of us are impacted by. And unfortunately, when you start talking about it, it almost seems like everybody knows somebody. They have a relative, a friend, they themselves have struggled. You're not going to put that idea in somebody's head by talking about it. That's an important thing for us as supporters to understand. Lean in and talk, offer that support in a safe, meaningful and empathetic way. That actually acts as a deterrent and kind of puts a pause in that person's thinking and planning. And we absolutely want people to do that. And it's uncomfortable, but you could save somebody's life.
I'm so, so glad that you said that you said that talking about it with someone is not going to put that idea in their head, because I know that some people might fear addressing the issue, which kind of leads me to my next question. And it's some of the barriers that are there when it comes to addressing suicide and suicidal ideation. What are some of
Yeah.
those barriers?
Stigma and just, the kind of, we don't have good literacy around how we talk about mental health. So for an example, if I broke my arm, I'm guessing anybody around me would probably go, Kevin, you need to go to the doctor. You need to, man, that looks pretty bad. There's help available for that. So in our culture, we already almost kind of know what to do with that because it's a common thing. When we talk about isolation, we talk about people feeling depressed or not showing up to things because their anxiety is just overwhelming them. We see these things in our loved ones and our friends and family members, but we kind of don't know how to talk about it, or we're not really sure, what resources are there, where do we go with that? And, people typically don't just walk into a psychologist's office or a therapist's office, social worker. They just deal with it in this kind of survival mode. So again, those barriers of just communication, I think, are there. We don't talk about it enough. And I'm, again, so grateful for opportunities like this to just kind of level set with all of us to say, we all deal with our own struggles. How do we talk about it? How do we talk about it with our friends? Making it okay that things aren't always okay. And that wellness is something that shouldn't have kind of that bad taste in your mouth, right? We all should be working towards our self-care and our mental health oftentimes, because again, it's something you can't see. There's barriers there. So we really want to promote that, taking a walk and talking about what's stressing you out with your family members or a friend, that can be a huge coping strategy. Getting trained, again, I know I keep saying that, but, having a space to come in, take it on, learn, hey, it's okay to ask somebody that direct question. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you had thoughts of suicide? Looking for that yes, no response and being prepared to hear that from a loved one. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do. So, a little education there can go a long way. And again, I think if I'm just going to kind of put this out here, we know that substance use and misuse is absolutely correlated with how we look at kind of when someone's struggling with things. So if someone's using or they're drinking more often, or, they're just in that kind of space, what does recovery for that individual look like, right? We always say there's no safety without sobriety, but that is a huge indicator that somebody might be struggling. So if we see these things, getting up the courage to talk about it, getting up the courage to approach them. And if you're not, that's okay. There's other people. You don't have to do that by yourself either. So kind of building those supports around that person can be such a huge lift to get that person, whatever that is that they need. And then kind of going from there.
I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and talking about how important it is to normalize the conversation, to normalize talking about when we're not okay. I mean, in this age of social media, we feel like everybody's lives are perfect, right? Except our own, when it turns out we're all at some point in time struggling and we all could use a helping hand at any given moment.
Yeah. If I can say this, during the COVID pandemic, if there was a silver lining, I think all of us were at risk, but we also as a collective kind of highlighted the needs for better mental health supports, screenings at doctors' offices. And something that I've noticed, and I think it's important for, adults particularly, is listening to our youth. We know that they're impacted greatly. And some of the young people that I get to, interact with and work with, I'm always amazed at how open they are to talk about these things. So, we like to kind of put digs in on social media sometimes, but I also think there's a lot of good with that. We see college level students, raising the flag to say, hey, we need help with this. And so are we listening to that? Are we able to kind of support talking about these things? And I do think we're getting there. It's a slow thing. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm always grateful that, conversations like this 10, 15 years ago weren't the norm or weren't happening. So, if we're listening to this today, or, it's awesome. That's a huge part of advocacy. And I think we're moving in the right direction, although be it slow feeling sometimes. just talking about it is bringing that awareness. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Wow, you're right. Talking about it is a good thing. And you know what? I'm glad that you said that social media can be a positive thing as well. Because you're right. You're right. We do say a lot of negative about social media, but we sometimes don't highlight the positive. Now, we actually have someone else who is joining our conversation today who knows really all too well the challenges and barriers that are in place. I want to bring into our discussion board member McCall Moore. She is a board member for Mental Health America. She joined in 2023, and she is lovely enough to join this conversation. McCall, thank you so much for being here and being part of, as you were just hearing us talk about, this really important conversation, bringing up how okay it is to talk and to be open and to try to encourage that kind of openness.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me and for giving me the chance to talk about it with Kevin. It's a really something I'm really passionate about, and I'm excited for this opportunity.
So let's talk about the work that you've done. When did you decide to become involved in Mental Health America, and what made you decide to become involved? What drives that passion in you?
Yeah, I kind of have to give my backstory to answer that question. So growing up, I was, always pretty aware of mental health, not only with myself struggling with anxiety and depression, but surrounded by some family members and friends that had it as well. So, I call myself fortunate to have a family that was willing to talk about it, because I know that that's not really a common thing. And so in 2017, I met my fiance, Elliot, who was just the life of the party, the guy that everybody wanted to be friends with. He was just had the most amazing personality, the best smile. You never saw him unhappy. And so we started dating. We got engaged in December of 2020. So right before COVID hit. So we spent the first few months of our engagement stuck at home, which ended up being kind of fun for our relationship. But, again, he was so loving, such a exciting and wonderful personality. I never ever thought to really dig into mental health with him. It was, like I said, my family, we've had it our whole lives. And so he kind of saw it firsthand, how it affected my family and our relationship, but also how hard we tried to help each other and to talk to each other about it. So in January of 2022, he very unexpectedly took his life. I was out of town at the time, and it, happened very quickly one evening. So that was really the trigger point for me to kind of do something about it. Sorry.
Oh no, I thank you for being so willing and so open in sharing a story like this one, because it is so incredibly personal. But I have to praise you in your bravery in sharing the story, but also in taking something like this and turning it into action, turning it into trying to help someone else who might be in your shoes, who might be in your fiance's shoes. You have taken probably one of the most painful moments in your life, and you've turned it into a way to try to reach out and love other people. And I want to commend you and tell you that is probably the greatest gift that we can give other people in this world is taking our own pain and instead of letting it crush us, helping it to lift other people up. So I know it's a really hard story to tell, but I want you to know how grateful we are that you're willing to tell it and that you're willing to put your pain into action.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's exactly it. It's taking the grief and the trauma and all the emotions that a loss like that comes with and putting it into something more positive, which, yes, it's a very hard thing to do, but it has been extremely rewarding, I will say.
Well, with Mental Health America, the work that you've decided to do, talk to us a little bit about the mission and some of the programs that are offered.
Yeah, of course. So I joined when they were trying to start up a group called Circle of Hope. That's within MHA, which is a group that is trying to educate and encourage younger people to end the stigma and to talk about it and do everything that, we just spoke about with Kevin. Because, we are the next generation. And I think right now, Kevin said it's ages 10 to 24 that suicide's the second most common cause of death. So I think it's just so important to educate the younger people, but also just get everybody together to acknowledge that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to not be okay and to have these feelings, because I think there's a lot of shame that people feel when it comes to mental health. And that's just so the opposite of how it should be. It's everybody experiences it. So that's kind of been my mission with MHA, is to start up this group and get everybody involved and engaged and see where we can go and hopefully make a difference in the younger community.
Well, and just from a personal standpoint, how has working with MHA, how has it helped you?
Yeah. Like I said, the grief and the trauma that comes with losing somebody so close to you, especially in a manner like suicide, it can be consuming and crushing. And so it's allowed me to put that energy into something and to honestly myself open up more and talk to people and tell my story more. And I notice once I do that people just start flooding with their stories and their emotions. And it really is just like the key to a door that needs to be open for everybody. And so I think just talking about it, relating to other people, saying that I'm not alone in this, that's really been one of the biggest things that's helped me through this.
In sharing your personal story, which again is so incredibly brave and loving of you to share with everyone, are there other things about your fiance, about Elliot, that you want people to know and to understand that might help them today as they're watching this or listening to this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, he, like I said, was so happy all the time and so positive all the time. He was the one trying to get other people, out of a rut. So I want to encourage people to, check on their friends, check on their family, people that may seem totally okay all the time. Like Kevin said, all the programs that MHA offers to kind of teach some of the signs are absolutely wonderful, but there are some times where people really just don't show. It is so deep inside them that they don't know how to show the signs. And so I think just being kind all the time is so important. And one thing that I did want to mention is Elliot's kind of saying every day was "be better today." He just woke up and he said, I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. And that's not really a saying of, you have to be the best. You have to feel this pressure. It's more of just being yourself and appreciating all the moments and knowing that if you're having a bad day, it's not the end. It's going to get better. And there are so many ways it can get better. And so, yeah, just be better today. Check on your people and remember that it's okay to not be okay.
And I also loved the message in there. Just be kind. I think we forget that when we're having a bad day, there are a lot of other people out there who might be going through something as well. And kindness goes a really long way, and it can move forward. It can have a tremendous ripple effect. If we'll just take the time to take a deep breath and offer kindness and generosity of spirit, which I want to say, McCall, you have done today by sharing your story, by being here, by having a really open and honest conversation. So thank you for your kindness today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to talk about this.
Of course. And I want to bring Kevin actually back into our conversation before we wrap up, just so that, Kevin, I know that you were listening to McCall's story and just what a beautiful, heartfelt moment that was. And as other people are listening and touched and maybe moved to be more open and to have a more effective conversation with a family member or a friend or a loved one, talk to us again. Tell us about some of the resources where people can reach out, where people can get help, where people can point other people so that we can offer that kindness.
I've had the pleasure to get to know McCall over the last year, and thank you. Storytelling is hard. I'm always I'm amazed when we hear these stories, and these are stories that we need to hear, right? Like I said earlier, McCall's one of many stories around suicide loss. We also hear from people who had that hard journey to kind of come back and in their recovery. That is such a gift. So McCall, thank you. I just want to say that. If you have that story and you want an opportunity to share that, again, in Mental Health America, we have our storytellers. We have the Circle of Hope, our Young Affiliates program that McCall's involved with. Get involved. I think I'd be very remiss to say that helping other people doesn't help us ourselves. And so it kind of, sometimes we need to pour into our own bucket, right? So taking care of ourselves, listening to stories like McCall's, listening to those things can have profound impacts on just how we view our friends and our family members. So absolutely, that's something that we do regularly. Again, I want to mention 988 and just a couple things around that. If you don't remember that number or you're not comfortable calling that number, don't hesitate to get involved. And this is something that I think, again, is very individualized, but maybe I don't see somebody and I'm really worried about them. I check in with maybe their spouse and they're worried too, and we can't find that person. Sometimes we have to take action. Suicide is probably the top of the crisis continuum. And so call 911, right? We can get wellness checks. If you do have to call, I know locally, Mecklenburg and Cabarrus County specifically, if you call 911 for emergency support services, ask for what's called a CIT, Crisis Intervention Trained Responder. You may not remember that, but tell them what's going on. Give the dispatch as much information as possible so they can go into that a little bit differently. We want people to understand that. It's hard sometimes because maybe we're scared that something might happen, but at the end of the day, you can save somebody's life. And particularly for young people, I've said this many times, and I have a very personal connection with this as well. Your friend might be mad. Don't tell your business, those types of statements. I'd rather have to fix a friendship to have to go to somebody's funeral, right? So, don't hesitate to get involved, particularly for young people. And again, I just want to, Beth, if it's okay, who are your adult supporters? If you're 15, 16 years old, the world's hard to navigate at any age, but particularly for our young people. So who are those people? And as a parent, oftentimes it's maybe not always mom and dad because we don't want to get in trouble or maybe, rock the boat at home. Is it a coach? Is it your math teacher? Is it your bus driver, right? Thinking of school based supports and services. There's a world of adults out there that are willing, trained, and able to kind of help in that process. And I think that's really important for all of us to understand. There's lots of resources. There's lots of community organizations. Mental Health America is one. I happen to work there and I'm very proud of the work we do. But getting involved and being able to kind of extend that support to somebody truly does save their lives. So, we have a list on our website of lots of resources, whether it be finding a therapist through our counseling center. And again, that's another great resource. And one thing that I'm very proud of that we do at Mental Health America is that we're not going to just, again, give you a number and say good luck. You're going to talk to somebody. We're going to walk with you through whatever that process is going to look like. We do a lot of work in kind of school-based age with our Parent Voice program. I just want to kind of mention that as an easy, accessible resource. We have family partners who have lived experience raising a son or daughter with their emotional and mental health. And they're able to kind of talk with parents from that lens, right? What does it look like for my student in school? What resources are available for their youth? So again, it's not always just a one size fits all approach. And I encourage anybody, As hard as it can be sometimes, make that phone call, go on the website. Just a little bit of exploring can give you some tools, and then connect with somebody. Sometimes, and excuse me, sometimes when I hear stories like McCall, it's such a good reminder that this is real, that these are real lives, and the impacts are so much greater than just the person who's struggling. Being a part of their healing and maybe putting some barriers before they decide to end their life, that's huge. And McCall, I love that you said check on your strong friends. I think a lot of times we think that the person who has the world and they're carrying the weight on their shoulders, they're humans and they need that help too, right? So opening up these conversations can go a really long way. And again, just like we ask someone to go maybe to the gym or go for a walk or do yoga, hey, tell me about what's going on with you, and genuinely leaning in to listen. That is a huge gift that you can give somebody. And again, are we prepared to do that in a non-judgmental way? So hope that was helpful.
Oh my gosh, so helpful. I am, it really has been such a gift to be part of this conversation with you, because I think everything that you both have said today is going to have a tremendous impact on people's lives, the people who are part of this conversation today, people who share this conversation in the days, weeks, and even years to come, that this is a big deal. And I'm so grateful to both of you for your openness, but most importantly for your passion in helping others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that actually ends today's discussion. I want to say another tremendous heartfelt thank you to Kevin Markle, Director of Education and Advocacy for Mental Health America of Central Carolinas, and to MHA board member McCall Moore. I hope that you all out there take advantage of the services and the resources discussed right here today. And if you know someone who could benefit from the services provided by Mental Health America of Central Carolinas, please reach out today by calling 704-365-3454. That's 704-365-3454. Or you can go online at mhaofcc.org. And again, a special thank you to the Mecklenburg County ABC Board for making all of this possible today and providing the community the means and the resources for organizations like MHA. We are so grateful to them. We're so grateful to you all for joining us. And thank you for being a part of this really, really important discussion.